Good morning, everybody. And Kitu, thank you for having me here. And you're correct. I remember the last time that we were together in the same forum was in 2018. So, yep, you guys just reminded me how much I miss delivering and sharing talks like this in person. But, yep, here we are. And I'd like to share with you some insights and perspectives in my mind, and I'd like to call it the yesterday, today, and tomorrow of our workplace. Just before the pandemic, I remember 2018, a lot of conferences and talks were about the future of work. A lot of people were talking about disruptions in technology and innovations and how all of this will actually affect our workplace. During that time, a lot of organizations were preparing for what they call innovative technological disruptions. Little that we know that all of those things will be set aside at least for a little while, because of other developments that we all experience as leaders and as organizations. During that time, I remember I was very, very interested to monitor and take a look at the different inventions and innovations happening, if not in our country, at least in more advanced economies. Because, it's just a matter of time, right? We will all feel the impacts of that here in the Philippines. I remember at that time, I was so interested to actually see live in one of my trips, because during those days we can still travel, right? I was telling myself I'd like to visit Japan. I'd like to visit San Francisco, where they said that there's already this robots actually serving customers in restaurants. So that was the last, look that I had. And while preparing for this conference, I just looked at, all right, what has happened? Are those innovations, advancements in technology still happening? Have they progressed to develop the technology and things like that? And here on screen, you're actually seeing, this is from a recent photo of how these technologies are continuously evolving despite the pandemic. I was also amazed to see that a lot of inventors or economies have actually even progressed to develop their models to become more productive, right? From a robot that can carry one tray, two trays, now they have this model that can actually carry, 4 or 5 trays. And surprisingly, in latest news online, this technology or what they call robot waiters are now actually helping, continue the economy and the industry and the business. And here you will see that some of this were actually even deployed to help continue restaurant operations in other parts of the world. Also in the news, you will see that this technology now is also being used to deliver other, commodities and goods. And here you will see that, they now have this autonomous delivery robots in Pennsylvania, USA, right? Amazing, right? And I was thinking, gosh, if there's this pandemic that's happening and there are these advanced countries and organizations who continue to develop these innovations while there is this pandemic, just imagine how the world would look like once we're all ready or more or less back in the workplace, right? In other news, there are also news about the flying cars. Before pandemic, it was just a concept, and now in the news you will see that they've actually completed the flight testing of the flying cars between airports, right? And in another news, in another location, I think other countries and organizations are really being very proactive about all of this. UK now is in the process of building the world's first airport for flying cars. And this was in the news in February this year, right? So just imagine all of this progression in technological innovations. I was also very interested in 2018, 2019 about 3D printing, right? And one of the news that really struck me the most during that time was about this 3D printing of houses happening in Europe. During that year, they said that 5 years, 8 years, 10 years from that time, 3D printing of homes will happen and they can print homes within 24 hours. So I just looked at the news and, checked is this still happening? Is this technology still progressing? And here you go, you will see that yes, they are continuously happening right now. In fact, there are already houses in 3 countries that are printing new homes. And maybe some of you, just like how curious I am, I also researched recently, how does this 3D printers look like? And here you go. This is one actual example of how homes are actually being printed right now by other countries. So this is all about disruptions, right? These are disruptions that essentially not new to us because they've been existing prior to this pandemic. And I would like to call this as technological disruption. And I'd like to start from here because in my mind, this is the yesterday and today, right? During that time, we said that, there are two very, very important competencies that organization should continue to develop. Again, this is pre-pandemic, right? We said that it's very important for organizations to be agile and to be very innovative. These are the only ways that they can actually change their business models and continue to thrive. Agility, we know that already. This is the ability for us to think quickly, decide quickly, even if we've not yet completed our analysis. But while we're going through that quick process, we're able to maintain our efficiency and productivity as an organization. And innovation, we said it's not enough that we manage the change. In some organizations, if you want to survive, if you want to continue being relevant and meaningful, we need to be able to introduce and create change. We need to be able to innovate. During that time, because of all of these disruptions, there were some conversations happening around leadership and HR community about, all right, how will this transform the kind of work that we do? And we said that, all right, this will change the landscape of talent, right? Not only in other advanced countries, but also here in the Philippines. They say that in the next, 2-3 years, work that are unique and cognitive are the kind of work that will continue to grow. Work that are actually routine and physical are the kind of work that will probably, either be disrupted because they will be automated or will shrink because some organizations would probably reinvent and evolve the way they do their business, right? So this was the yesterday. This was the kind of conversations that we leaders and HR practitioners were talking about prior to pandemic, right? So let's rewind a little bit what happened early 2020. So we were in the process of talking about technological disruption, but at the same time, early 2020, something happened. And there was this environmental disruption that affected our country, most specifically the Calabar zone. But it also got felt across the entire Philippines. And that was the time when Taal volcano erupted. It has been a while since we experienced eruption here in the Philippines. And I clearly remember at that time, there were already news about COVID. But we were not focused on that. We were focused about where do we get N95 masks because they just ran out of supply. Here in the Philippines, we can find them, and Metro Manila was also experiencing the ash fall, right? So everybody was concerned, busy about this environmental disruption that affected our country. Little that we know, after 1 week, 2 weeks, another kind of disruption came. And that is, at least in my perspective, I'd like to call it a biological disruption. And that is when, the COVID or about the pandemic started to happen. And it's different in the sense that it's something new. No, it's something that we've never prepared for before. The eruption, I think, in most organizations, probably that's in our BCP plans. But a pandemic, it's there, but we never imagined that it will ever happen. Now, that scenario since March, April of last year, a lot of organizations were forced to actually change the way they operate. They were forced to change the way they operate even without any preparations at all. I would call this period as the period of great reset for most organizations and even leadership, right? Because all of a sudden, you don't have a choice but to make a decision, that is not covered by a strategy, a policy, a guidelines. We didn't even realize that we will be actually allowing our people to bring home their computers and start working from home. So it's very unprecedented, it's unpredictable, no one prepared for it, but we managed to survive it. And one of the most common change that it brought us is actually how we are managing our workforce. A lot of us resorted to working from home. A lot of us ended up, managing our employees remotely. And this has actually impacted the way our employees live their lives. The artificial barriers between the office and the home came crashing down when the pandemic forced employees around the globe, not only in the Philippines, to turn their homes into their offices. And this is not easy for a lot of people, especially when you are working from a Filipino home. Because unlike in the United States or in Europe, wherein probably some people would have their own bedrooms, there's more space, they have better connectivity. Here in the Philippines, real talk, the reality is our homes are usually crowded. We share bedrooms. Sometimes you don't even have a corner dedicated for work, right? And that has actually affected how concentration, how focused our employees are when it comes to delivering their work. And this has also caused a lot of stress and pressure, not only amongst our employees, but also leaders and organizations concerned and worried about the productivity of employees working from home. So if we go back and look at, let's say, one of the things that we usually talk about when it comes to, employees and productivity, we would sometimes always talk about employee experience, right? In the past, when we talk about employee experience, it's only about, all right, are we providing our employees with the right tools? Are we engaging our employees? Are we making sure that our employees have the right systems, technology, so that they can be proactive? Nowadays, it's a little bit different because we somehow look at how our employees are living their work lives while in their personal space, the personal space of what we call their homes, right? Before, we are just managing employees in the four corners of our organizations, of our structure. Nowadays, it's a little bit different. Different because today, we are now actually having our employees work from a space wherein there's technically no boundaries, right? They work with their family members, they work with their kids around, and even if, for example, they're single, let's say, for instance, in our case, majority of our employees are actually, early 20s single. Some of them are still performing all of these responsibilities to their siblings. So that space of work that used to be in our offices, in our companies, in our organizations, that has totally changed to the home space, right? So, and at the time that it happened, it actually changed the way we're managing our people. Right now, as leaders, we're expected not only to manage their productivity, but how they're actually achieving their productivity targets while going through some emotional roller coasters with their families, right? Some of them probably were not aware, are living with people who have the virus, right? And we know for a fact that taking care of somebody who has gotten the virus is very, very difficult mentally and emotionally. So just imagine how are our employees feeling each time they are in that kind of scenario, right? Some of our employees probably are also living with family members who've lost their jobs, right? So just imagine how can they concentrate if they are now all of a sudden being considered to be the breadwinner of the family. Sometimes, there are some leaders who would probably be very particular about the surroundings and work environment of their employees. We know that, our technology, internet is not very stable. Sometimes there are background noise that affects, the work and the meetings. And again, this can be very, very stressful to our employees, right? So these are the scenarios of today. These are the realities of today. And because of these biological disruptions that has reset or that has changed the way we manage our work and our employees, most of them working from home, this has also introduced another kind of disruption, right? And that kind of disruption for me is an emotional disruption. I know that you're probably not seeing my slide. It's actually hanging on my side, but don't worry, I'm trying to put it back up for you. So I'll just continue and show you the slides later on. So another form of disruption is on the emotional disruption, right? Because of all of this stress, people are now saying that we are right now at a very emotional workplace. And when we say workplace, this is also referring to the workplace from home, right? And this emotional workplace is not just affecting the mental health, but it's also affecting the emotional well-being of our employees. And mind you, leaders, us, we're employees too. If our employees are going through huge emotional well-being disruption, likely the leaders are also going through the same experience. And this is what we call emotional disruption affecting how we manage the workplace today. And this is a condition that is very, very evident in a lot of places. They say that this is now actually too much for most people, too much for most employees, and too much for most leaders. Just imagine we are now on our second and a half year, entering the third year of being in this situation. And people are saying that extending this further, they are not sure anymore how it will affect or impact other organizations, right? So they say that as an effect, this will cause great emotional fatigue amongst employees and amongst leaders and amongst different organizations. All right. Let me just pause for a little bit. I will now try to go back and share again my screen, and I hope you will now see it clearly. All right, just give me a few seconds. It's hanging, it's lagging a little bit, but I think it should be up there in a few seconds. Right. All right, so I hope you guys are able to see it. All good?
Yes, you're good,
All
Michelle.
right, good. So all of this, if employees will continue to go through these changes, such as working from home with children, with siblings, having to collaborate with new sets of colleagues they've never met before because these colleagues were hired during the pandemic, working while taking care of family members alongside the pressure of economic uncertainty. Employees now are actually exerting themselves too much to contend with a high volume of changes that are highly disruptive. And this is going to cause us change fatigue. And change fatigue is already the negative employee reactions to organizational change that can harm our business productivity. And this is why people are saying that 2022, if not yet happening now, we will soon get to see and experience the big quit. What is the big quit? This is what they say, the great resignation. People will get tired. People will prioritize their health and safety. People will say, I need a timeout and I need to focus on family, safety, and welfare, right? So this is the today, right? This is the today, and this is again a result of the so many disruptions happening in most countries, in most locations,
Recording
in
in
most
progress.
companies nowadays, right? Now, needless to say, we still need to prepare for tomorrow, right? Needless to say, we still need to prepare for what's to come. So a lot of organizations nowadays are creating strategies related to work, workplace, and workforce. A lot of companies now are looking at how do we sustain our customers? How do we evolve and reinvent our business so that we can continue operating? How do we make sure that our new workplace, when we are back at work, if not 100%, probably in a hybrid work kind of arrangement that we will have a safe, secure, and still, even if some are working remotely, remain to be very, very collaborative. And what are the skills that we need to develop from our employees today so that they can operate effectively and efficiently with the new demands of the work tomorrow? And most importantly, how do we keep our employees stay connected, motivated, and engaged? So these are the focus of most organizations. Some of them right now are considering to automate, probably embrace a new technology that will enable hybrid workplace environment. This means probably, what is it that we can automate, do so that we can do a more efficient remote work arrangements for our employees. That's good. That's fine. I think that has been expected since 2, 3 years ago, even before pandemic. But let's always remember, as leaders and as HR practitioners, no technological transformation will ever solve these kinds of problems that we are experiencing now. We always need to keep in our minds that business, yes, they do create value, but people create value for the business as well. And while most of our organizations will have the same access to technologies and innovations, at the end of the day, the people who will make it different for your organization are the people that you are working with. There has been a lot of conversations around, so how do organization leaders look for, or what is now their expectation from HR practitioners? And when I say HR, these are not just the HR department of your organizations. I hope you guys, if you're not from HR, you realize that you're actually also performing an HR related work because we are all people managers, right? So they say that the role that HR play in this transformation that's going to happen, if not yet happening, is number one, helping leaders and organizations focus on most important. And the most important is, how do we rebuild our organizations? How do we transform our organizations? And how do we align the new organization to the very core of our existence, which is our mission and our purpose as a company? HR is also expected to enable a future-ready company. That means not only providing safe and collaborative workforce, but making sure that we develop employees, people who can remain to be effective and efficient because they have the right skills needed for the future. And most importantly, we are now being expected to help leaders take care of everyone. And that is not only just providing them with pay and benefits, that's about, you know, um, mental health, better welfare. It's not just about that. It's really about how do we help shape the mindset of leaders that now the new hybrid work environment would mean you need to be a leader, a compassionate leader that can drive productivity even if the people you're working with are not beside you. You need to make sure that as leaders, emotional well-being of our people is most important, right? So this is what I call a transformation mission. I think for a lot of people, leaders in HR, the goal now is, how do we make sure that despite everything that is happening, our people will choose to stay? That they will stay because they believe in the organization. They will choose to stay because they believe in the mission of the organization, not because they don't have a choice. Right? So this is the greatest mission for the future. And I think this is very, very relevant to what we are experiencing right now in the Philippines. I've been with Dexcom for the last 2.5 years. Fortunately, Dexcom is a technology innovation company. So we manufacture sensor technology and we put it in a device, and it's being used by diabetic patients. It's attached to their torso or arms so that they continuously monitor their glucose without pricking their fingers. And that glucose is being monitored and transmitted to either their mobile phones or smartwatches, and they can see how the glucose are performing. And this is right now being used by children, by parents, by professionals, by athletes, by almost everybody, right? And right now, the mission of the organization is to make this technology available to other countries outside the United States and outside Europe, right? Now, why am I sharing this? One of the things that we've started to really provide stronger focus on as an organization to make our employees choose to stay with us is initiatives, conversations, and communications around our purpose as an organization. We are communicating to our employees that in this organization, we work not only because we want to get paid, not because we want to get good benefits, not only because we want to have access to better learning and development opportunities that will prepare them for the future, but it's because every single day through the work that we do, we're able to help save lives of diabetic patients. And I'm sharing that because I think that is very, very important for us to keep in mind. That as we go through this reimagining our workplace in the organization, we need to keep in mind that we have to remind our employees what's most important, and that is our mission and our purpose as an organization. As leaders in this new era of work environment, I think it's very important for us to be connectors, collaborators, and builders of the new organizations. We need to also make sure that we are there for our employees so that they understand what is going on. I know that we will soon be changing a lot of our systems, a lot of our processes. Sometimes we are making decisions without any reference to any strategy, policy, or guidelines. And that is why it's very critical also for us as leaders to be champions of trust and integrity. Meaning that even without the guardrails, even without guiding principles, because these are all new to us, that we will always decide based on what is the right thing to do. We are also here as organizations continuously transform and evolve that we will be challengers of meaningless processes. It's time for us to take a look at our processes and question them and ask ourselves, will this process be helpful in making the new organization efficient and productive? If the answer is no, then time for us to take a look and maybe remove that process, remove that policy, remove that structure, and change it with something that's more meaningful and relevant given current work conditions. We are also here as drivers of passion and purpose. I think what organizations who will be more successful than others, the difference will be these are organizations who will focus on what they're passionate about and what's their purpose for existence as companies. And to us as leaders, as we develop the skills we need for the future, I hope we will always remember that we're not here only to learn about, have better business acumen, know the language of business, know operations, know automation, data analytics, data insights, data science. I'm sure you will hear a lot of those in the future, but I hope we will never forget that most important is we are here to be proponents of the value of the human spirit. This pandemic has reminded us that nothing is more important than the health, safety, and well-being of our people because at the end of the day, they are the ones delivering success for our business. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that was able to give you a perspective of what has been happening yesterday, today, and how we can better prepare for tomorrow. Thank you and magandang umaga.